Okay, welcome back everybody. If you take your seats, that would be brilliant, and we'll carry on with our next session. I thought this morning was really stimulating. Cueness, as my mother, who was a school teacher, would say, Cueness, Máise de Hulle. This morning was a really interesting session where we had a big picture with keynote speakers. We're now breaking off into a panel discussion with 3 speakers first, and we're going to look more at particular examples and how we can actually improve our competitiveness. If you want to follow us on Twitter, by the way, our hashtag is #CrokeConf. That's CROKECONF, because I know there's a lot of social media people in the room today. Our first speaker of this session is a man very well known to most of us. Let me give you a little bit of a biog. He's an architect by profession, Labour Party politician, obviously. He's been Minister for Education and Skills since March 2011. Currently is a TD for the Dublin South East constituency. He was Minister for Finance from 94 to 97 and leader of the Labour Party from 97 to 2002. He successfully presided over the Department of Finance during the Rainbow Coalition, and he chaired the EU Council of Finance Ministers during Ireland's presidency in December 1996. Please give a very warm welcome to the Minister for Education and Skills, Rory Quinn.
Thank you very much, Miriam, and good morning to all of you. Our theme this morning is competitiveness, and I want to broaden it out beyond its conventional descriptions and ideas of measuring it. Let me start with education, self-evidently. Population of the Republic of Ireland is 4.4 million people. As we speak, as you sit, over 1 million people are in full-time permanent education. 1 million. There's no other country that can actually talk about it in those terms. And they're participating in quality full-time education. And that's not to mention all of the people who are doing regular upgrading of their skills, and I'll come and speak about that in a number of minutes. But education, for the kind of economy that we are going to participate and work in, and for the kind of economy that the children who are sitting their junior cert this very day and the leaving cert that's going to evolve, is going to be based on education because of the nature of our society and because of the competition that's coming from other parts of the global world. We have an education system that works, but could work much better if we brought in necessary reforms. And I want to tell you very quickly that we are bringing in those necessary reforms. I want to salute one of my predecessors, Mary Coughlin, who listened to an audience like you, which said we are not getting enough scientists, we're not getting enough engineers, we're not getting enough people in the STEM subjects, STEM, that will enable us to produce the sort of employable workers that we can compete with. What she did was to persuade the reluctant university heads to increase, because they control the point system, not the Department of Education, to actually reward and incentivize young students to do more honours grade mathematics. And she persuaded them in time to do that, and it's rolling out for the first time this year for the leaving certificates. There are now, the maximum number of points for the 6 subjects was 100 per subject, so you could get 600. That maximum has now gone up to 625. The number of students who have applied at leaving certificate level to take the higher grade honours maths, which is basically the entrance to the kind of skills level that we're talking about, has increased by 24%. Now, if they keep their nerve and don't at the last minute panic and revert back to the easier level of maths, we're going to have a 25% increase with people with those skills. So in listening to an audience like you, talking to the providers of the education, the third level institutions, devising an incentive that is balanced, the extra 25 points, has in its very first manifestation showed a 24% uptake. Now we'll know when the maths courses have gone through if they've kept their nerve and haven't in fact stalled or halted. We've a good primary school education system, but we don't have a good secondary school education system. And I'm going to reform it. I've started the reform. Anne Looney of the NCCA has put something in place that we're ready to run with. But let me tell you my dilemma as a politician. When the junior certificate reform is complete, and when it's rolled out and phased out, starting in September 2014 with 1 subject, in September 2015, and this is for the entrance into first year, We won't be through that process of reform, and those students will not be through that process of reform until 2019 at the very, very earliest. So reform works at two levels. It works at structural reform, which of its necessity has to be patiently measured, calculated, designed, and persuaded into the system. And we started that process. But that's a long-term harvest. The short-term harvest is the other side of the equation, which is Springboard and the ICT program for industry. And that is two programs that we've engaged in the last year plus, where industry said to us, look, there is a worldwide shortage of skills in a number of areas. We will come to Ireland because you tick all the other boxes, but we don't have here the necessary range of people with the skills that we need that would persuade us to locate here. So we had a conversion program for people with skills who no longer find employment in the areas that used to thrive. Quantity surveyors in the construction sector come to mind as just but one example. And we've had conversion courses for them with virtually a guarantee of full employment when they come out of the 9-month course. And that guarantee is informed by the fact that there's 3 parts to the course. One part is training, one part is placement, and the final part is training again in the area that they function in. So we are, from 2 levels, talking about reforming the junior cycle and the secondary school system, which is the weakest part of our education system in competitive terms. The university sector is going through a major reform which has been initiated, and there will be collaboration between our 7 universities and in total the 33 third-level institutions, because much of the landscape that they occupy was designed and inhabited over 20, 30, 40 years ago. And we need to think now of the changes that have taken place and what new technology and better transportation links provide us with between all of those colleges. That system, and I'm meeting the heads of universities and the chairpersons next week, that system will be changed over the next 3 to 4 or 5 years. But it's a bit like any new product, and many of you have experience of product design. The idea may be brilliant, the pathway to production may be slow, and you may have to test the marketing of it on a number of occasions. But if you don't start with the idea, you'll never get to the rest of the way. And we have started. So what I'm saying to you is this. In the area of education, where 25% of our population are engaged in full-time education, that's competitive advantage number 1. There are very few other countries that can actually say that with the certainty that I have said it to you now. Secondly, we are listening to the market. We've listened in the short term to what people are looking for in terms of academic outcomes, and I've given you the example with Project Maths and with the extra points for the Leaving Certificate. And in the short term, we've responded to the very quick needs of people who say, well, look, there's a shortage of particular sets of skills. Can you not retrain, upgrade, and relaunch back into the labour market people who have a general range of skills, but who could fine-tune them and reapply them to market demand? Now, recently, an international survey of the world for the availability of skilled labour, and incidentally, this is an international problem. There are currently 5 million young Europeans unemployed in the European Union labour market, and there are 4.5 million job vacancies in the same labour market for people with specific skills. What we found in a recent survey is the following. Ireland achieved the following key goals that rank it ideal for foreign direct investment activity. We, out of this survey, came first for the availability of skilled labour and came first for flexibility and adaptability of the workforce, and first for incentives for investment, and first for attitudes in terms of globalisation. Can I conclude by saying competitiveness is more than just the kind of metrics that I've referred to. It's about, is this a safe place to do business? Is this a good place to live? Can my family happily live in this environment along with me? Because I do have a life outside the job. Can we actually be part of a community that reaches to their requirements in terms of the schooling that they might require, the cultural activities that they might want to pursue, or indeed just the recreational activities that might engage them? And can they be understood if they go down the street and go into the supermarket in a language that they speak and that we speak as well? All of those things are key factors from my version and understanding of competitiveness. And I just want to say, in terms of education, and I'll finish on this point, in terms of education, it is my intention to lay the foundations for having the best educated and the most flexible Irish citizens who can go anywhere in the world as well as staying at home, and be such an attractive proposition that the foreign direct investment, which will increasingly exceed the level of skills in the international labour market, will come here out of choice because we can provide the best for them. Thank you very much indeed. We're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that. And we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of these three speakers. Next up, Nora Casey. Well, she's CEO and owner of Harmonia, Ireland's largest magazine company, which prints over 4 million magazines annually for the Irish, British and US market, and more recently the Chinese market. Harmonia's stable includes strong women's brands such as Irish Tatler, You, Woman's Way and www.ivenus.com, and specialist titles like Food and Wine, Auto Ireland and Ireland of the Welcomes, which interestingly is aimed at the Irish diaspora with over 80,000 US-based subscribers. She's also a member of the National Paediatric Hospital Development Board, the London-based Women's Irish Network and the International Women's Forum. She was awarded the Veuve Clicquot Businesswoman of the Year Award in 2007-2008 and has won the Publisher of the Year Award for 3 years running. She's also very well known right now as one of the dragons on RT Dragon's Den, but she is far from a dragon. Please give a very warm welcome to the CEO and owner of Harmonia, Nora Casey.
Thank you. I am a bit of a dragon on occasion. I'm really delighted that Ambassador Rooney's asked some of us who don't come from traditional political backgrounds to talk today. I'm a big believer in all of us making a contribution to the future. I came back here in 2002. I have a vested interest in, first of all, voting yes in the fiscal treaty, and this isn't quite as nerve-wracking as the frontline fiscal treaty debate, but it's close. And I also have a vested interest in Ireland's competitiveness as well as my own business. I have a lot of investments in a very, very diverse group of companies, so of course competitiveness is key. So I'm not going to talk at all about the traditional competitive investments that you've already heard brilliantly from the Minister and the Taoiseach and Bill Johnson this morning. I'm going to talk about something completely different. I'm a great Twitter. All morning I've been tweeting everything that's been said. I'm not sure everybody was delighted to receive it, but I sent it out anyway. And when I knew I was coming today, I was searching for a big idea. I thought there must be one big idea out there, so I asked all my Twitter followers, no mean feat because I've inherited quite a few who are part of the No campaign now. Nonetheless, we had a great conversation, and I've come up with 3 things I'm going to tell you that came out of that conversation. A few minutes is not long for a woman who talks, so bear with me. My tweet address is @Nora Casey, so if you are tweeting today, please tweet me. So first of all, I'm a great believer in dazzling. I talk to young people all the time. Jerry Kennelly in Kerry, he got me involved in the Young Entrepreneur Programme. I went down and I spoke to 1,000 kids from transition year who were whooping and hollering because their 10 colleagues had won the business finalist, and it was making business sexy. And I got up and talked to them about dazzling, about impressing the hell out of me, about being the brightest and the best. When I heard Bill talking about it this morning, I said, these kids need to know mediocrity doesn't wash. They go out there, they be the brightest and the best, they join the top talent. And you know what? Kerry will be taking over Ireland because of Jerry Kennelly and that programme. They were brilliant. But so what do we do as a country? How do we dazzle? Do we really dazzle competitively? So my first idea from me and my Twitter colleagues is we need more sensational strategies. You know, in areas such as traditional strategy, I did strategy at Ashridge Management College. I was so good I went back and did advanced strategic management. I heard all about Porter's 5 forces and barriers to entry. But then I read an amazing book called Blue Ocean Strategy. Some of you may be fans. I became a big fan. And I thought as a small country, small, flexible and fast, Blue Ocean is where we need to be. Where the new stuff is, where nobody is competing. If you think of Nintendo, beforehand, we all saw young teenagers, my boy's 13, sit in solitary playing his games. Nintendo came along and they created a whole new space all on their own. They said, let's develop something which is aimed at women. We saw women in ads for games and aimed at families. And they created the Wii and Nintendo DS. A whole new space they created, even in non-traditional markets. Take the circus. I'd never invest in a circus. You know why? All the controversy about animals, it's low ticket, it's dwindling audiences. Cirque du Soleil came along and said, forget all that. We're not going to make a better circus. We're going to create something totally different, aim it at adults, and suddenly it's a high ticket item. So in Ireland, we need to have smart stimulators. We have some monolithic infrastructure, and by the way, I can say things no one else can say because I'm not part of any political party and I'm just talking as myself, but we do. And we have some tired brains sometimes doing stuff that more dynamic, big brains need to be involved in. So one of the things I'd love to see is a more coherent approach. We've got emerging entrepreneurs, I see them all the time, but we need to get to them before they decide what they're going to be entrepreneurial in. And we need to focus their mindset on that lovely big blue ocean space, because the red ocean space is a bloodbath, and we're not as competitive as we need to be in order to compete. We've definitely got increase in supply and dwindling demands. So that's number one. My second idea is also to do with strategy, and it's to do with a dynamic strategy, guess where, in the digital space, not a static one. It's my particular bugbear. We have near neighbours in Britain. We should be better. We're fast, we're small. Our USP is that we can move much quicker than everyone else. Yet across the water in our nearest neighbour, they have invested in digital, they have rolled it out, they've made it a priority for government, and they're now the highest internet-dependent economy in the world at 8%. And where are we? We're at 3%. And we're still working on a digital strategy. I'm fascinated. I heard the Minister of Communications talking about it at the Digital Forum, which is great. Not due to come out till the end of the year. I'm sorry, this isn't a tome. This isn't something that should be coming out of government departments. We need some big thinkers dynamically strategizing. When I talk to businesses, I say, you strategize at speed. Everyone knows businesses that strategize at speed are more successful, more competitive, and they make a hell of a lot more money. And yet we have these endless months going on and on looking at a digital strategy. We need people meeting all the time, coming out with deliberations and policies that create a revolution in the digital space. And it's not just about schools, although it's incredibly important for schools, but it's also about businesses, small businesses and more mature businesses. My third one. This, I think, is the big idea, and it's controversial. So, here we go. Lots of multinationals in the room, and I am delighted that you are here helping to contribute to our economy. We take $4 billion in tax receipts and the corporation tax. You represent a third of it. Fantastic. Great to have you. We'd love more of you, and we'd like you to invest a little bit more with us. So I began to think, how could we get you to spend a bit more with us? Because we're both in this together. Here we are with 13.5 billion deficit year on year. We're already open season in Europe. There are lots of other countries pointing at us and saying, how come they've got preferential corporation tax? And we also have very preferential tax regime. So all you guys benefit from that. And I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, you should benefit. We want you here. We want you creating jobs. About half of you have plans to increase employment in the coming 12 months. But we'd like you to reinvest back with us a little bit more, because it's in your interest to help us start to reach the curve that brings our economy back up again. And the way I thought I would do it, I wanted a big magnet over Ireland, you know. When you take your revenues and they all leave the country and fly off, I wanted to provide something that would be a win-win, where you would be encouraged to reinvest back with us. So I have to say, DCU, one of the most fabulous academic centres. I was involved in it. Got talking to Bream McKay. There's 10 centres for science and technology, and that's great. That's great. That's where industry partners work. They provide 25%, up to 25% or more of government funding, and they create these centres. There are 2 at DCU, and they're all over the country, where we bring together academia, science, engineering, and we create spaces that are very important. So what is the space, the magnet? My idea, and my Twitter followers, is to create very significant, scalable R&D centres at a much higher level. 20 million is about the cost of the centres that are up and running at the moment. So I'm talking about significantly more than that. It's in your interests. It would create clusters of expertise in Ireland, which is what we need. It helps us to move forward as a country. It'll help our economy. It'll defend our corporation tax rate against those who would try and break it. And also, hopefully, you would get something back from it. And I'd love to see a dialogue happening around that, linked to our major academic centres. So building on maybe the work that CSETs have and creating much bigger spaces for R&D, which would keep some of that money back in the Irish economy and help us in the future. Now, finally, and this is only an idea, I was very impressed when Barack Obama involved business leaders in an educational roundtable discussion last year. It was fascinating. He also involved some big-name people like Colin Powell. And from that, he got industry leaders and business people to invest in education, because we all know that the future for us and our competitiveness is about our kids. There's no difference between a US kid and his or her competitiveness and an Irish kid, other than the infrastructure and the funding that's required. And I would love the Taoiseach or the Minister to do something similar and involve industry. I'm a part of Farmley, and I love the fact that we involve the diaspora. I was a member of the diaspora for a long time. But equally, we need to involve mature business leaders here in Ireland in the future of the economy. So I throw that out there as a thought. It would be great to have a roundtable discussion on education here in Ireland. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Nora, for that. And continuing our theme of Irish competitiveness, we've already had the political and educational point of view, the business. And up next, I know Ambassador Rooney, sport is such a big part of his life, and today is related to sport because success is very much involved in sport. What to say about our next speaker? He is a national institution, and I'm very, very fond of him. He's an Irish media personality, broadcaster, author, sports pundit, former professional footballer. He says he wasn't very good. Lots of people disagree and say he was a very fine footballer, including his own colleague Johnny Giles. He's been a football analyst on RTÉ during coverage of all the big events, the Premier League, UEFA Champions League and international football. As well as working for RTÉ, he's also worked for all the other big broadcasters here, TV3, Today FM, News Talk. He's not just a soccer analyst. In fact, I think when people are now looking forward to Euro 2012 and hoping we do very well, fingers crossed for our lads, I think watching Eamon and Johnny and Bill on that panel is almost as exciting. You never quite know what Eamon's going to say, but you always know it'll be incredibly honest and direct. Please give a really warm welcome to Eamon Dunphy.
Good morning, Mr. Ambassador and ladies and gentlemen. I was asking my friend during the coffee break, I was looking around the room and I said to him, this isn't really my scene. I wonder why they've invited me. And he said, they're probably hoping you'll say something outrageous. But I can assure you I'm not proposing to do that. What I would like to begin by saying is, in his opening remarks, Ambassador Rooney referred to the Rooney Rule, which was an initiative of his and the Pittsburgh Steelers, introduced in the NFL in the United States in 2003. And the idea was, the Rooney Rule is that when you advertise any job in management or coaching at the senior levels in the 32 NFL clubs, it has to be, you have to interview an African-American or someone of Hispanic origins or someone from the minority culture. It's an amazing fact that was introduced in 2003 when 6% of people in the NFL management structure were of ethnic or minority origins. By 2006, 22% of people in 3 years, it had more than trebled, almost quadrupled. And that is as a consequence of that very fine man there and his beliefs and inculcating his beliefs into the business. And it's the behavior of one man that can make such a difference that really should be something we all think about today. We've heard a lot of facts and figures and statistics which are business orientated, but we really need to look at the way we personally behave in relation to the people we're working alongside, who are working with us or who are working for us. Now, I can say for sure that what Dan Rooney did in the United States of America would have helped me greatly. I'm a street kid from the streets around here. I couldn't get an education. I left school when I was 14 because we couldn't afford second-level education, which was not free at that stage. I couldn't get a job either. Fortunately, I was good enough to be a journeyman footballer. I went to England and got an education. But to be competitive, which is one of the themes of this conference, you have to be able to get in the game. What Ambassador Rooney did in the United States of America is enable African Americans and other minorities to get in the game. And I suggest what we have to do here as a country, and you as corporate people, you have to get people into the game who wouldn't otherwise be in it. And I'm very happy to pay tribute to Rory Quinn. He left this country's finances in 1997 in extremely good order. He was an outstanding Minister for Finance, maybe the best we've ever had. And Sean Lamass was in that post in the past. If he does as much for education and has the opportunity to do so much, I think that will be hugely to the benefit of our country. Because for all the facts and figures and numbers that have been talked about here today, and no doubt will be spoken about later in the day, one unquantifiable figure is this: how many people of talent, ability, and passion and resilience never get a chance to be in the game because they can't get educated, or they can't get a job, or they're forced to emigrate. And let me move towards the finish by talking hopefully about this country, which is a very difficult thing to do at this moment. When I think about this country, I see failures. We tried to regenerate the city of Limerick. We wasted 200 million. We failed, and the project appears to be abandoned. We introduced free second-level education in 1966 through a very enlightened education minister, Donnacha O'Malley. Second-level education isn't free anymore, and third-level education is a dream for many of the people among whom I grew up. And that is a waste. The core objective of government should be to enable ordinary people to fulfill their potential and to become contributors to society. And sometimes in Ireland, the omens aren't good, and this is one of those times. But when we look at the field of sport, we can, I think, derive great optimism. A young woman, Katie Taylor, from Bray, will hopefully bring back a gold medal from the Olympics. In her dedication to her sport, her brilliance, I think she's an inspiration to all Irish people. In the context, we should bear in mind that it was revealed last week that in her training camp in Bray, where her father is her trainer, they are alone. They have no shower in the gym and no changing room. And that is an example of somebody succeeding despite the odds. We have in Tipperary the Coolmore Stud, run by John Magner, the greatest stud in the world, bar none. We have Aidan O'Brien training there, 43 years of age, from an ordinary rural Ireland family, an absolute genius. If you look elsewhere, we have Ruby Walsh, A.P. McCoy, the great champion jockeys. We have Johnny Murtha, we have Michael Kinnan, Dermot Weld, and if you go to other sports, we have the likes of Rory McIlroy, Graham McDowell, Padraig Harrington. Magnificent people, not just because they're champions, but because of how they're champions. Their modesty when they win, they're magnanimous when they lose. They are a credit to this country. And if there's anybody here from abroad who wants to know about the character of the Irish people, look at our sports people. Look at McIlroy. Look at Ruby Walsh. Look at Henry Shefflin. Look at Brian O'Driscoll and Paul O'Connell. These are Irish men and Irish women. Katie Walsh, Nina Carberry. They're magnificent people. And they come from ordinary backgrounds. And their very success is an inspiration to many kids. I would end on this note. Ambassador Rooney proved that one person with conviction, can change things dramatically for the better. And the people I've referred to here show, if you make the changes and open the doors, the energy, the resilience, and the commitment and the character of the people of this country will do the rest. Thank you very much.
Okay, Eamon, thanks a million for that. We're going to have our question and answer session now. We've lots of roving mics. If you wouldn't mind standing up for our brilliant sound men here, would like you to stand up just for the sound point of view. And you can direct your questions at any or all of our panelists. So who would like to go first? Great, good gentlemen. We'll give you a microphone there. You might just say who you are if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm Shannon O'Cushteen. I've been invited here on behalf of Show Racism, the Red Card. The United States Embassy funds some of our work. And I have a question in particular for the Minister for Education. Part of Ireland's competitiveness is having good linguistic skills. Already this morning I've spoken 3 languages, Irish, English and Spanish. I'm sitting here beside some people from the Argentinian Embassy. Unfortunately, we're very poor at language skills in this country. We've very little respect for our own national language, despite a lot of effort being put into it. So I want to know, what can you do to improve Ireland's competitiveness? You mentioned that you'd like Irish people to be able to compete at home and abroad. But if we want to compete abroad, we have to think beyond the North America, Britain, Australia and New Zealand. Irish is an official EU language, but you know, there's many other European Union official languages. So I think part of the thing we need to do is to address our major problem with linguistic skills. It's always been a problem, and we have to get beyond the idea that everybody else speaks English, so we don't have to learn other languages. And it also relates to some of the stuff that I do in the Show Racism, the Red Card work, where we talk about integration. So that's where my kind of question is coming from.
Okay, great. Minister, our languages, how to improve them?
I took out the modern language pilot project in primary school. It was costing 3 million in round figures, because I had to find 19 million euro within a constricted budget to improve our disastrous numeracy and literacy standards. We've got to get our people, all our people, and particularly the people that Eamon talked about, because invariably there's a class divide in literacy and numeracy. And we've got to address that to enable them to get to first base. And quite frankly, I want to get them to first base in a language within which they're fluent, both as a reader and as a writer. The pilot project didn't work. After 12 years, it wasn't recommended to be rolled out. There are other issues which time doesn't allow me to get into here. But we have a unique problem in terms of every other European country is teaching their own language and a continental language alongside it. We have 2 languages plus another, and our curriculum, by general consent among professional educationalists, and I'm not one of them, is that the existing primary school curriculum is overloaded. So we've got to get the foundations right, and I made a choice. It was a difficult choice, but I'm very satisfied with the correctness of that choice.
Okay, another question? Great, gentleman there. We'll just give you a microphone as well, please. If you wouldn't mind standing, that would be great. Gentleman just there. Yep. Is it working? I think it is.
Morning.
Yep.
Yes. Morning. My name is Jerry Ellis. I'm a consultant in the area of accessibility and usability around the inclusion of people with disabilities in society. We heard a lot of talk this morning about diversity. We heard diversity in terms of the inclusion of women and in terms of the inclusion of people with different cultural backgrounds, and that's marvellous, wonderful, and I fully and 100% agree with it, concur with it, and concur with the idea that it is a benefit to include them. We didn't hear the other area, which is the biggest area, which is inclusion of people with disabilities. A year ago this week, the World Health Organization and the World Bank produced the first world report on disability. And that said, of the 7 billion people currently on the earth, about 1 billion experience disability. That is a huge market. Okay? If you look at businesses, individual businesses, 80% of disabilities are acquired during a person's working life. So it's much cheaper and easier for businesses to retain those people and to continue to gain from their experiences rather than go out and recruit new people and try to train them up and try to give them experience, which takes years. So it's much better for organizations. And of course, if you have people with disabilities within your organization, that then sensitizes that organization to go out and follow that market, which is around 15% of the entire world population. That's enormous, it cannot be ignored. 1 billion. How many countries in the world have more than 1 billion? China and India, and that's your lot. So basically what I'm trying to say is, how can we improve our competitors by ensuring that we include this huge number of people? Thank you.
Okay, I might give that to all panelists. Nora, first one.
I couldn't agree more with you. I think it's a really important topic. I too was delighted to hear about diversity this morning, and I always enjoy when I come up against Caroline Casey, no relation, who does such amazing work with the Ability Awards and makes it such a positive and proactive vehicle for people to take part in. Diversity is enormous in Ireland in other regards. I'm often the only woman sitting on a board, and it's always the case, nearly always the case, that most of the men come from the same background, and sometimes the same school, and sometimes the same sporting hobbies. So it's incredibly hard to get diversity around the boardroom table. Spent most of my life saying we shouldn't have quotas and that women needed to stand on their own 2 feet. I've always done it myself. However, I'm full circle actually at the moment, because the only way that you'll get change is to have at least a third of our politicians, and we have amazing female politicians. They're still only lower than sub-Saharan Africa in terms of penetration, 16%, and of course in boardrooms. And I feel this exact same about people with ability issues. So I do think that we need to address those problems. And you also know that I was a nurse for the first 5 years of my life, spent my time getting paid in job satisfaction instead of money. Might be why I do a lot of investments now. But also, my husband passed away recently, and I would have said I was an amazingly astute, intuitive person around people with disabilities, and because he was disabled for the last few months of his life, I began to understand just a small amount about how narrow my focus had been beforehand. So I commend you, absolutely, I agree with you.
Thank you for that, Nora. Eamon?
I mean, the question of affirmative action is a very large question, and there isn't unanimity about it. But as Ambassador Rooney proved in the United States, affirmative action is necessary. And indeed, it can inspire and change the world. And we need affirmative action in the area of disability as well. There is a lot of legislation, but again, I think it comes down to a simple fact. It's how each one of you out there and us up here behave as an individual. It's our own individual sensitivity to the needs of other people and our responses to that should be the governing force. And affirmative action, I wasn't always in favor of affirmative action, but the Rooney Rule is one of the things, and many other things. The fact, that I just say this about affirmative action and sport in particular. It was in 1947 that Jackie Robinson became the first black man to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers, to play Major League Basketball. It was in 1966 that Muhammad Ali was the first sportsman in the world to reject the Vietnam War, to protest against the Vietnam War, and to pay with his career at that point for 3 years at least. An inspiring man. So things can change, and symbolism is important. And now I do believe in affirmative action, because we do need to not waste one person in this fight that we're in, particularly right now.
Minister, that whole issue of, disability and I suppose increasing our own competitiveness, which is what we are talking about today.
Well, I've always been in favour of affirmative action, and welcome on board, the two of you.
Slow learners.
I think in the IT space that we have on this island, both for the foreign direct investment, for the companies that are here, and Nora referred to them, There is an enormous market, it seems to me, with smart, modern technology to fully enable people with disabilities. And I've seen studies that show that 20% of all of us will at some stage be disabled. It's not the caricature that sometimes we think about. Smart technology will enable people with skills, with existing skills, to stay active in the labour market because they'll remain independent. And I think if you were talking about that aspect of a very wide spectrum of different types of disadvantage and disability, I think the skills that we have already in the Irish investment economy and the Irish foreign direct investment economy, that we should be looking at products that would enable people to maximise their learning or their working experience. Certainly modern technology is transforming the classroom for people with learning disabilities and with physical disabilities that impede their ability to actually learn.
Okay, thanks, Miss. Another question? Yeah, gentleman there on the right. We'll get you a microphone. Thanks a million.
Hello, my name is Martin Murray, Asia Matters. I'd just like to follow up on the comment the other gentleman made regarding language skills. I lived in Japan for years, and like many of the Irish diaspora who were out in Asia, we all speak different languages. My wife is Japanese, we're bilingual at home. There's lots of people like that. The point I wanted to make was that basically, recently we did a big Europe-Asia conference, and we deliberately had lots of Asian people helping. They were young students from the various universities here, Chinese, Indonesian, Japanese, etc. What surprised me was that most of them, upon graduating, are all going back to Asia. Now, given that the world growth now really is in Asia, we need to develop our exports to Asia. We have people that we're training here in Ireland who speak the languages. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. They're here. Why not open the doors here and let these foreign friends of Ireland who are Asian and speak the languages of the markets we need to sell into, why not let them stay? That's the point I'd like to make, And could I just say, pardon the plug, but the Asia Pacific Ireland Business Forum is on here in Croke Park, 13th of July, and we'll bring back all the Irish Chambers of Commerce from Asia to come here. But the key point is, why not let them stay to help us sell to Asia? It's much easier to have a Chinese person here who gets Ireland selling to Asia than trying to teach an Irish person how to speak Chinese and the culture, etc., etc. Thank you.
I'll give that to Nora. And are you assuming a lot of them would like to stay? In other words,
They want to stay, they just can't.
Yep, fair enough.
I mean,
Nora?
it's a visa issue. I mean, it's nothing else.
Nora?
I know the Asia Business Forum. I had the pleasure of spending 4 months right across Asia working with the Chambers of Commerce in all of those different countries, and we were also working in Shanghai for the expo and got connected greatly with Chinese companies and Malaysian companies. My interpretation actually is that they don't want to stay. I chaired a Chinese conference recently, and the education minister was there, and we spoke with the Chinese community, and they said increasingly they do want to return home. They want to be part of their own story. I wouldn't have thought it was very difficult to keep some of those people in the economy because they do have those amazing talents and skills. I feel much more importantly, we need to equip our own young people to speak languages. My own son is dealing with 14 subjects for his junior cert, which is far too many, and one of the choices he had to make was Spanish or business. And you know what I'm going to say, every child in the country should be learning business and entrepreneurial skills and fiscal knowledge. They may not have employers when they come out, and they need to have that talent. And to give a child the choice between business and Spanish just seemed wrong to me.
Okay, Minister Eamon, do you want to add anything on that? Yeah. Minister?
I recognise my cousin Fergal Quinn in the audience, who's probably the best retailer there is, and he would probably agree with me since we're both the grandchildren of a grocer. You sell product and service in the language of the customer. I've driven a number of German cars. I never bought a car from somebody who was speaking German to me. It depends what you're actually trying to do. That said, what I have done is to look at the whole Asia opening up. And Chinese will be a subject that people will be able to take in their leaving certificate in 4 to 5 years when we have built the capacity. The 2 Confucian institutes and the Hanban institution back in China, that is their parents, so to speak, are working with us to provide an option for those students who want to learn Chinese. But I don't think we should lose the run of ourselves in terms of fluency in a foreign language. There are various studies that have shown that unlike the nationalist narrative that the Irish were forced to give up the language, that it was stolen from us, all the scientific research shows that that is not true. The Irish uniquely chose to stop speaking Irish and to speak English because that was the dominant way out of where they were oppressed.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question because I saw that hand up. Sorry about this, because we're going to bring this session to a close. We have another great session coming up. Yeah, if we could give... It's great, it's a lady.
Thank you very much. Gina Quinn, Dublin Chamber of Commerce. Nora, I was really interested in your big idea about a kind of super research fund and centre in Ireland. And my question is really for you and the Minister. I'm conscious that the government spends a lot in the area of research, most of it coming through SFI, but there's a huge dispersion of funds across agencies, across research institutions. And while competition is very important in research, we also must have focus. So is there an opportunity to take Nora's big idea and the government's funds and create an area of specialisation in Ireland? I'm just wondering what your reaction to that would be. Thank you.
Nora first, maybe, and then the Minister.
My big idea is not yet fully formed, so it came about from a whole series of conversations on Twitter and from talking to people like Brian McRae at DCU and others who have a lot of expertise in this space. I suppose the main point I was trying to get across is those of you in the room who are multinational corporations who benefit enormously from our corporation tax and our amazingly good tax regime. We're both in this together, and it would be great if we found a way of making you use more of your revenues in Ireland and creating a magnet. For some period of my life, I published peer-reviewed journals, in fact launched evidence-based practice with the British Medical Journal, and my big thing was around clusters of expertise. You get amazing results when you create clusters of expertise, and although the 10 centres are doing a great job, they're not nearly big enough to create innovative R&D. That's a tautology, by the way. Why would I say innovative R&D? Because sometimes our R&D is not innovative. And this is about creating big spaces with big brains and perhaps feeding in some of that emerging entrepreneurial skills that we are seeing mushrooming all over the country and connecting the industry with our academic institutions. But it needs more thought.
Okay, thanks, Nora. Minister?
Two brief observations. Science Foundation Ireland was a very good initiative. It's running now for about 10 years plus. One of the innovations that it did, which was totally contrary to what was the European practice at the time, was to put up a fund and to invite participants or people who would want to avail of it to actually bid for a slice of that fund. But there were terms and conditions attached to that bid. You had to have a partner, you had to have 2 or 3 institutions, you had to have spread out, so to speak, unlike the old model where there was a research fund of X million and it was divided on a pro rata basis to all of the eligible institutions. So the culture of Science Foundation, I think, has transformed the quality and indeed the outcomes of scientific research in Ireland. The second thing, however, is we're a very small scale country in terms of total population of the island is just 6 million plus. I would, if I was to go for a national champion or to go for a specific winner, which is really at the back of your question, unformed or uncompleted, I would look at something that we control totally, and that would be our natural resources in terms of food and in terms of milk and beef, essentially, because they're products of the one animal. We have already in Cork a very good dairy science expertise. Given the rapidly emerging market for food product in China, specifically China and India, I think we should be developing expertise in that area that would make the transport and long-distance sale of that product, which we control ourselves, more efficient, more effective, and more unique to Ireland, because we would retain the benefit of that scientific research in every farm and in every field in the country.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to call the session to a close, but just before I do, with Eamon Dunphy here and the Ambassador's love for sport, I cannot let you go, Eamon, without a quick word as we head into the Euros. What are our chances? Predictions, Eamon.
I think we have a better than even chance of going on to the second round, at which stage, Mr. Ambassador and Mrs. Rooney, you want to get out of this place because we go crazy when we get to the second round. So I think there's a better than even chance that in about 10 or 12 days' time, it'll be crazy around here. Board up the embassy, watch the telly, and have a good time.
We live in hope. Let's give a warm round of applause to Minister Quinn, Eamon Dunphy and Casey. Guys, if you all go. Meanwhile, I am now going to invite up our next panel, but we are going to exchange the microphones, so don't leave. We were talking there about Irish competitiveness. Our next 4 speakers on our panel, which will run to a similar pattern, is going to talk about redefining business as usual. We have 4 excellent speakers on this as well. We have Richard Bruton, our Minister for Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation. Katrina Hallahan from Microsoft, she's the EMEA Director. We have the National Football League's Chief Marketing Officer, Mark Waller, and we have, of course, Monster.com Sales Director, James Maley. So again, a really high calibre of speaker. Just remember also on Twitter, and as Nora Casey got lots of her great big ideas there on Twitter, tweet us as much as you want, and our hashtag is #CrokeConf, that's #CrokeConf. Let's hope Eamon Dunphy's predictions are correct, and that in a good few days' time we'll all be celebrating here. Are my guests about to come up, or shall I sing a song? Yeah, I won't sing a song. I do have the Minister. And are you mic'd up, Minister? You're very welcome. Perfectly. Well, our first speaker on this is going to be Minister Bruton, so I will introduce you to him. Like all the ministers, they've got incredibly busy portfolios right now. They're always busy, but in Ireland of 2012, the Minister for Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation is obviously an incredibly important role. Certainly our theme of today, dealing with competitiveness, this is an absolutely essential department. Richard Bruton, as we know, is a Fine Gael politician and has been a TD for the Dublin North Central constituency since 1982. He was appointed as Minister for Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation in March last year. He previously served as Minister for Enterprise and Employment from 94 to 97, and he was the Fine Gael spokesperson on finance and Deputy Leader of Fine Gael from 2002 to 2010. Please give a very warm welcome to Minister Bruton.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Miriam. It's a pleasure to be here to speak to you. The topic I've been given is redefining business as usual. And I think that's a pretty apt challenge, because really the challenge we have here in Ireland is not a question of going back to where we were. It's a question of transformation. And when people talk about stimulus, it gives the impression that all you have to do is just sort of revive a few things and everything in the garden will be rosy again. But the truth is that for Ireland, having suffered the impact of a property collapse and the banking collapse that followed, that distorted many of the decisions we made, many of the features of our economy, and it is a question of fixing those. I know you've been listening to Rory Quinn, and I'm sure he has outlined the sort of change that has to happen in education, because students influenced by the property bubble, they switched their choices. Instead of choosing the areas of technology that were really important for a strong export-oriented economy, they made other choices, and he is having to carefully rebuild a system so that people make the right choices and we rebuild the sort of skill base that we need for the transformation we're undertaking. And the same is true as we go through the different parts of the pyramid, if you like, that make up an effective and competitive economy. And I like to think in terms of, a pyramid. It has an element, a layer, if you like, that's all about the enterprise and what companies and enterprises need to do, the sort of leadership they need, the sort of teamwork they need to build, the skills they need to bring to bear, the technology that they need to have, the innovation and the culture of innovation they have to create within their enterprise. Those all are huge challenges. Equally, there is a policy layer, and we have to make sure that we devise, the ingredients, whether it be the tax system or the business environment or the skill environment or the infrastructures or cost competitiveness. We have to build that pyramid at a policy level. So I think the challenge for us is to find in a time of adversity, as other countries have done, in a time of adversity, find the opportunities that is there. And that is the challenge for Ireland as a small open economy, seeking to redefine business as usual, if you like. And it has to be just as much in the public sector as in the private. And I think part of our weakness through the boom years, the tiger years, is that we forgot about the importance of innovation and change within our public service, which is just as important as what happens in the private sector. But this government, I think, has recognised the scale of the transformation that needs to take place. And we are resolutely confronting that change. You can see it in the public finances. You can see the sort of changes that ordinary people have accepted as being necessary in terms of, reducing pay levels and so on, that are necessary to achieve the transformation. We have confronted the banking issue, and though we still do not have a banking system that is fit for purpose in terms of supporting a small open economy. We have done a lot of the groundwork to start the changes that are necessary. And I think as a government, we recognise that this is going to be a difficult journey. And today's employment figures reinforce that this is going to be a difficult transition on which we're undertaking. But it is one that the Irish people can deliver. We have done it before, and the government has set what I believe are bold ambitions that are very relevant to redefining business as usual. We want to be, as the Taoiseach repeatedly commits, we want to be the best small country in which to do business by 2016. We want to get back into the top 5 in terms of world competitiveness. And we are starting to turn that corner. Our cost competitiveness has improved by 20% relative to the rest of Europe. We are now back in the top 20 in terms of world competitiveness rankings. We're in the top 10 in terms of the best place to do business. So we are making progress, but we recognise also that there is a huge agenda of change still there to be confronted. And within my own department, we are looking at the areas in which we need to change. And they're areas that are very familiar to people. We do have to confront access to finance, a huge problem holding back particularly our indigenous sector. We need to look at the innovation, and we've sought to streamline the investment we make in innovation so that it is more attuned to the needs of our ambitious companies. We need to continue to change the business environment and look at areas, particularly in the sheltered sector of the economy, where we need to make further changes. And there's a programme, an ambitious programme in that area. So I think this is a time where I think the people, by their decisions, and the government have redefined business as usual. We recognise we're now undertaking a difficult road of transformation, but we are absolutely up for it. And I think the way we are seeking to deliver that is through programmes like the Action Plan for Jobs and Pathways to Work. And what distinguishes those from other strategies, which we've seen thousands of strategies in my long period in politics, and what very often characterised strategies in the past, is that they were high on ambition but very weak on implementation. We have now reversed the rule. The Action Plan for Jobs is high on implementation. Yes, it has ambition, but it focuses on the 270 things that we will do this year, 2012, quarter by quarter, timelined and milestones. And we are delivering to that standard. We don't hit every target, but we have set that culture within the public service that we must reach these targets. Next year, we're going to have Action Plan 2013. And it is open to people like yourselves to help us shape that, because this is about continuous learning. Global changes are changing where the opportunities lie. They're changing the sort of business models that will succeed. And we need to be able to adapt to that. So I think this approach that the government is taking, which is high on implementation and is open in terms of consultation and talking to people who are at the coalface, who are the entrepreneurs who create the jobs that we crave, that is the way to go. And I think it's a decisive shift from, if you like, what passed as business as usual in the past, which was all about the glossy announcement, but very little about the accountability, the grinding out of implementation. That's the shift that we have to make, and we have to do it at a time of dwindling resources. So the challenges are huge, but we do look to people like yourselves who are working in communities, in businesses, to help us on that journey. And I have absolute confidence that as the international environment improves, Ireland, with the changes we're making, will be really well positioned to grow and to rebuild our employment base. And that's what I suppose motivates all of us who are in politics at the moment. It's the key issue. It is people's work that shapes their capacity to contribute, to fulfil to their potential. And that's what we need to recreate in Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Minister. Our second speaker on redefining business as usual is Katrina Hallahan. She's General Manager of Microsoft EMEA Operations. She joined Microsoft in 1986 and became MD of the Microsoft EMEA Operations Centre in 2008. She leads a very large team of 600 that manages operations across 120 countries. She's a qualified executive coach and is passionate about change management and leadership development. She also sits on the board of the VHI here and on the board of the American Chamber of Commerce. Give a very warm welcome to Katrina Hallahan.
So I'd like to start off by thanking Ambassador Rooney for allowing me the opportunity to speak at the event today on two topics I think that are critical to all of us here in Ireland: competitiveness and redefining business as usual, which is really, for me, all about reinventing ourselves. So just to give you a little bit of backdrop on Microsoft, we're in Ireland since 1985, and we started as a manufacturing facility with 100 employees. We now have 1,100 employees who are spread across an operations centre, a development centre, our data centre, which is our newest asset, and our sales and marketing and services group. So we, over the last 27 years, have had to reinvent ourselves and evolve our business and our skills and our people to become more relevant to what we need now and in the future. And I think we're in an environment which is rapidly changing here in our economy and also in the industry that I'm in IT. And it's important that we stay relevant and we adapt to that change, and we continue to raise the bar and become competitive and be able to compete in that environment. So, I mean, when I reflect back, I think about when we started, because I started with the company 27 years ago, and I think what got us where we were when we started up is not going to get us where we need to go in the future. And we need to look at how we redefine how we're conducting business as the landscape changes. I was interested in Minister Quinn's comments around education, because it's one of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the role of industry in influencing and preparing for skills, that it's not all down to the government. We have a significant role to play as industry to get involved. And I'm going to take you through some of the things Microsoft are doing to try and engage in different levels of education to try and influence the skills for the future. I'm also going to talk to you about how we think about retaining staff and the role that management play in that, and how we've thought about the skills development there. And then I'm going to talk about diversity, which is a really passionate topic of mine, because I'm the diversity and inclusion sponsor for Ireland, and I want to talk about some of the areas we're focusing on there. So to get started on the education side of things, we start at second level education. And that for us is all about inspiring careers. It's about talking to people who are in transition year, who are thinking about what their career might be or what third level education track they might take. And it's trying to get them excited about the IT industry and about science and technology, and to ask them to think about the opportunities that they can, careers that they can have in industry. So we tell them about the dynamics of the business, help them understand where the business is evolving to, what's relevant now, which seems to be cloud for everybody. But we also talk to them about technology skills and the value that those skills can bring, not just into the IT industry, but into every industry, and how we change the world we live in. And then we also get them excited about the breadth of jobs. I'm not a technology person, never have been. I'm actually a finance person. But I have been in the IT industry for 26 years. So trying to help them understand that there is a breadth of roles that you can play in this sector. We then have a lot of passion around our graduate program and third level education. And we have a robust program like most others. But the one that I would highlight is the Imagine Cup. Microsoft sponsors a program called a Magic Cup for third level education, and it encourages students across the globe to think about how can we use technology to change the world we live in. And Ireland has had a significant impact in this area. Last year, IT Sligo won the worldwide event, which was magnificent, and they had a piece of technology that was focused on road deaths and how do you anticipate behaviours of drivers on the roads to try and reduce the amount of road deaths. This year, we've just completed in our National Cloud Week our final of the Irish event, and NUI Maynooth have won the Irish part and are heading off to Sydney in Australia now to represent Ireland in the global event. And just to share with you some of their idea was to create a cloud solution in healthcare to help people with multiple sclerosis to manage their health, which is a long-term illness. And what they've done is they've created an application on the phone for people with MS to manage their medication and their symptoms so that when they go to the healthcare provider, they can have a more robust discussion about how they've been feeling, what the implications of taking their medication had and the impact on them. And it really has captured the idea of how you can use technology to have a major impact on somebody's personal life and their health. And then, of course, the last area not to forget is about people who then come out of education. How are we engaging in that? And the Career Reboot program is something that we're heavily involved in. We've worked with all of our partners who have open positions in the IT industry to run an event at Microsoft to advertise their jobs and to talk to people about how they can get involved in the conversion program to retrack into IT. We've also have a long-term partnership with FIT, which is focused on the long-term unemployed. So how do we get people who are long-term unemployed back into the workforce? And then we are working with the IMI and UCC to develop cloud programs and how do we evolve the education system to make sure that it's relevant for the technology and the skills that we need for the future. So that's all the way along in whether it's second level, third level, or even in university, the work that we're doing as an industry participant to try and influence education. So once we've been able to do that, we'll be able to attract the right level of talent and skills. The next part is about how do you keep them? So once we've hired the right skill set, how do you retain the people? And we've got lots of programs around mentoring and around coaching and how to keep people developing their careers within Microsoft. But one of the pieces of analysis we've done is that really the management layer, the frontline manager, are the people who can have the most influence on a person staying in the workforce or leaving the company. You heard the saying, people often leave their manager, they don't leave the job. So we've invested over the last number of years in two key programs around management development and management assessment. And the management development program is a very unique program where we take all of our managers into a role play environment with real actors. So we hire actors from outside who come in. Some of them were on Fair City and they were very familiar to people when they came in. But we get them to role play a performance management discussion with the manager, a tough employee, somebody who's not performing, or even a great employee who's exceeding all the expectations, but how do you motivate them? And we're able to use the actors to play difficult situations, people being overly upset, people being aggressive. And it really gives them a real-time experience on how to act out or how to feel what it's like to be in that performance management environment. We also had a heavy focus on change management. We've heard the Minister talk a lot about the fact that we need to change, we need to be innovative, we need to be creative. And our employees over the last 27 years in Ireland have had to readapt and be innovative and change the way they work. So having a management team that can enable that has been critically important. And then we've had our assessment centre, which is people who aspire to be a manager in the future. They want to understand, what does that feel like? So we put them through an assessment centre, and we've actually had people who have passed the assessment with flying colours and are ready to be managers, or indeed we have people who need development and we create the development plan. Or on the third level are the people who come in and do the assessment centre and go, I never want to be a manager. I didn't realise just how difficult it is and what a thankless role it is. So they decide that that's not the career plan for them. So it's been an interesting journey, and part of our investment in trying to be the best companies to work for, and we've run that 4 years in a row now, is around that management investment. So once we've focused on our attracting the talent and then we retain them, one of the key things that Microsoft is focused on is continuing to retain a set of diverse talents that obviously reflect our customer base, because that's critical to us to understand the needs of our customers, to influence our products, etc. So diversity is a key focus of ours, and we have a very robust global diversity program that focuses not just on gender, not just on culture, even though 25% of our employees come from 50 different countries here in Ireland, but also on sexual preference and on accessibility. So nice to hear Jerry's question earlier about accessibility. We're very focused on that. And I'm going to just touch on two of them very quickly. One is on gender. We believe it's not a women's issue. We believe it's a business issue. I mean, 50% of university graduates in the EU and the US are women. 80% of consumer purchases are done by women. 50% of enterprise purchases now are being done by women. So it's critically important that we try to engage women in our workforce and we understand what the challenges and the needs are that they have. And we've got a very robust program from representation, attracting the right level of talent, and you heard me talk a little bit about the inspiring careers. We have things like Digi Girls and Digi Youths, trying to encourage young girls to get into the industry. And then we also ensure that we have female role models. So we have a whole learning series which help women think about, how do I have the right level of impact and influence? How do I have the confidence to go for the next job? How do I manage upwards and influence my manager who may not be a female? And then we have a lot of focus externally. We created a forum connecting women in IT, and we have 10 different companies, HP, Google, Intel, and others who are involved in that, in creating mentoring rings and networking opportunities for women across the industry. And then the second area that I wanted to touch on was our accessibility area. Obviously, as a technology company, we're very focused on accessibility and developing assistive technologies to assist people with disabilities and to make sure that they can integrate into the workforce and create that inclusive environment. And a lot of people would say, well, that's Microsoft, they're a huge company, they have the funds. But I wanted to share just one simple example that any of you could get involved in. We partnered up with Enable Ireland and AHEAD, and we ran a program with a number of young people who have a disability, who really wanted to understand how do they do simple things like create their CV, and how do they then do an interview, because they're very nervous and apprehensive about that. So we brought a group of people in, and we helped them build their CV and tell them what was relevant to put on it. And then we did real live interviews with them, with our management community, to help them get that experience. The feedback from the individuals that came in was it was a hugely powerful impact for them, because they were so nervous. Now they knew what to expect. And from our managers, it gave them a perspective on, you see beyond the disability. It's very important that you see the talent and the opportunity that these people can bring to your work environment, and how critically important it is to be more inclusive. So it's an education on both sides for ourselves and our own employees, but also for the people who got that experience. So hopefully you'll realise that from all of the work that we're doing, it is about continually raising the bar. It is about how do we build that inclusive environment from a diversity perspective that allows everybody to have the opportunity to have a role to play in industry, to have a job, and to make an impact on not just the company, but also on Ireland and the future of Ireland. Thank you.
Thanks a million for that, Katrina. Next up, our speaker in this section on redefining business as usual is Mark Waller. Let me tell you about Mark. He is the Chief Marketing Officer with US National Football League. He joined the NFL in February 2006, heading up the league's international effort. He was named Senior Vice President of Marketing and Sales in June 2007, before being named the NFL's first CMO in September 2009. Mark is responsible for creating an integrated marketing function that operates across all NFL platforms and properties, including NFL Ventures, NFL Network, and NFL.com. He works closely with sponsors, network partners, advertisers and licensees to ensure that the NFL brand is consistently presented in alignment with the goals of all parties. In addition to his responsibility for the NFL brand, marketing and promotions across all entities, Mark also continues to oversee the international business. We're very, very lucky to have him here today. It's very close to the Ambassador's heart. Warm welcome for Mark Waller.
Thank you very much for the very lengthy introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, Ambassador Rooney. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great theme, and as we kind of look forward, we kind of ask ourselves, so where will growth come from? Where is the future growth going to stem from? And you've heard it all morning. It's going to come globally. It's going to come from Brazil. It's going to come from China. It's going to come from re-engineering European economies. It's going to come from refocusing the US. It's going to come from emerging technologies, the cell phone, the application development, and how you blend and merge those emerging technologies with the dinosaur industries that we've already built. And so, as you look at diversity and you look at things like the Rooney Rule, they're a prerequisite to succeed in the world that faces us, because you can't solve those issues without diversity. If you take the National Football League, I'm often asked one very obvious question, which is, what on earth is a middle-aged Englishman doing as the chief marketing officer of the National Football League, arguably, after the American government, the most American of institutions? And the answer is very simple. I happen, it shows what a great country the US is, I count as a diversity statistic there as a middle-aged white male. Because in that world, I'm actually able to bring a diversity of perspective and thinking. And that's something Ambassador Rooney has embraced, our ownership collectively embraces, and our commissioner embraces. And so we wrestle with, how do we bring in people from diverse backgrounds, even within the US. We're the most successful sports league, 180 million US fans, 70% of the population loves us. But to grow within the US, we're going to have to bring in more female fans. We're going to have to bring in the massive growth economy of the Hispanic community, which is coming into our nation with a passion for a different sort of football. And so how do we own that population in the future? How do we capture the youth population, which is predominantly Hispanic, but also even among the white population, obviously, so many more choices for those kids as they're growing up now in terms of where their passion is going to go. And so the theme of diversity for us is a prerequisite in terms of the sort of management skill required from a leadership team to be able to succeed domestically, internationally, or globally. And so that theme for us in terms of leveling the playing field is obviously something we're very focused on, and the ambassador has led a lot of thinking there. But what that leads to is a fundamental, and I was delighted to hear Eamon sort of call it out, requirement for leadership to have clarity of vision and alignment around where you want to get to, not necessarily how you get there. And one of the things I think that in leveling the playing field that the NFL has done extraordinarily well is the body of leadership over the last 60 to 70 years has been unbelievable. We've had 3 commissioners in 50 years, which is extraordinary in of itself. But more importantly, each commissioner worked with the previous commissioner before he took over. So when Commissioner Tagliabue took over from Rozelle, he'd already worked on behalf of the league. When Goodell took over from Tagliabue, he'd worked directly for Tagliabue. So you're passing on an alignment, a vision of where you want to get to from individual to individual, and you're passing it on with a true responsibility to deliver that from the commissioner's side. If you look at it from our ownership model, our ownership model is an extraordinary model. If you want to be an owner in our league, you have to sign up for arguably the most un-American of principles, which is competitive equality and a social democracy amongst the owners. So every owner only gets one vote, whether you're Mr. Rooney or Mr. Mara in the larger, more successful markets, or whether you're the owner of an emerging team in an infant market like Jacksonville. And so the requirement for your ownership, your board, if you like, or your senior executive team, to be absolutely aligned behind those principles ensures the continuity of your vision. What it also does is it enables you to spend all of your time focused on how you're going to deliver rather than what you're going to deliver. And one of the things that we see a lot, we deal with a lot of sponsors, obviously, and we see massive amounts of organizational change in our sponsorship relationships and our broadcast relationships. And what happens there is when new executives and new leadership teams come in, all bets are off. Everything has to start all over again. So for us, the continuity of leadership is a critical component to ensuring not only a level playing field, but success. But I want to stress what it doesn't do is lead to complacency. So the one thing that we work unbelievably hard on, and if any of you have ever met our commissioner, he's probably the embodiment of this, what we call a restless dissatisfaction with everything every day. And so whilst we have continuity in our model and we have continuity in our ownership, we constantly are challenged and challenging to revisit and look at what we do. And I'll try and give you a couple of examples of those, and I'll try and do them comparatively without wanting to do disservice to any other sports. But as an example, we have a process in the league where we put about 40 people in a room every weekend, and they watch every game. And they watch it with one very specific goal, which is to see how the game is played, how the rules are applied, and whether there are things that we can do to those rules that will enhance the game, either from a player perspective or from a fan perspective. At the end of each weekend, we consolidate the learning, and then at the end of each season, we actually put together a set of rule changes proposals that we take to a bureaucratic committee that sort of works them through the ownership process. And the reason I make that point is if you listen to a lot of other sports, they're busy focused on how do we keep things the same? How do we not change the rules? How do we avoid having to bring in instant replay, as an example? Why on earth would you not want to bring in instant replay? To make a better decision, to give the fans the right outcome, to give the players the right outcome. I believe many of you in this audience probably lived through the Thierry Henry incident of a few years ago. That was a painful experience. That was an experience that was unnecessary. And so, as I say, what we try and do is we try constantly to look at our game, which is our product, and look at it through the lens of how can you make that better. One of the tasks that I have as we take the game internationally, there are not many international audiences that are used to a game that takes 3.5 hours and stops and starts and goes to commercial break every 7 minutes. So how do we actually evolve the game structure? How do we actually evolve what we do on the field as we take that internationally? And we're working hard to evolve that as we move forward. So those are a couple of examples of kind of where we focus on competition. But probably the most vivid example is the league structure itself. We have a salary cap. We have equally shared revenue. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Green Bay, Wisconsin, or New York, you're going to get the same share of revenues. It doesn't matter whether you played and won the Super Bowl or whether you were the worst performing team in the league. And then the other thing we do is that we actually penalize the most successful teams the next season. So if you win the Super Bowl, you get the hardest schedule the following year. So we actually work hard to pair this year the New York Giants up with the most difficult schedule. When it comes to picking future draft picks, you get the last pick in the draft if you won the Super Bowl. So we put in place a series of rules to make the total league competitive in itself. So as a governing body, our job is to make it competitive and to make sure that all teams are equal. Because ultimately, and I would argue that what the NFL does in the US, which is truly extraordinary, is every single fan believes that their team is going to win on any given Sunday. And as a result of that, we do two great things. We give people hope, and lots of it. But secondly, we actually unite the country. It's not a divisive experience, a sporting experience of ours. We actually bring the country together because every single weekend, everyone comes together in a truly optimistic scenario of hope. And that is based on the competitive structure that we built. If we had a model that was truly entrepreneurial and capitalistic, we wouldn't be able to do that because the rich markets would ultimately be able to overinvest. So that's kind of our structure, and that's sort of how we try and keep the playing field level. And then the final point, which I've already touched on, but I want to come back to, is this idea of sort of constant dissatisfaction and innovation. And innovation for us is not just doing new things. It's how do you actually do old things in a different way. So at the moment, we're wrestling with two large issues in that area. The first is we've done such a good job of making our game look brilliant on TV that it's actually arguably a better experience to be at home watching it than it is in the stadium. So we're spending a massive amount of time now with our technology partners and with our other business partners on actually having to go back and reinvent the game day experience. What can we do to add in to those fans that now require wireless connectivity? They require the ability to email photos to their friends. They want their fantasy football stats in the stadium, and they actually want to see what's going on all the other games in the same time that their own team is playing. So we're working hard there. And the other area we're working hard on is as I said, we've done a great job of making the game look brilliant on high-definition large screens. The world is now moving to high-definition small screens that are portable. And so we're spending a lot of time working through how on earth do we actually broadcast our games in a way that will make our game experience on your cell phone the best sporting experience on a cell phone, which is a very different one. So two examples of kind of where at the moment we're having to innovate a lot on things that we're actually very proud of and are already successful for us elsewhere. So that kind of is it. The one that we haven't cracked yet at all is how do you take a sport that is played only in one country by one nation of athletes and make it global? And we wrestle with that one any and every day. So if you have any thoughts at all on how to do that, I would welcome all ideas. Thank you very much.
Thanks a million for that, Mark. Fascinating. Our final speaker of the morning and of the conference, that we're having a splendid speaker over lunch. But our final speaker of the morning is James Maley. He's Commercial Director of Monster Ireland. Based in Dublin, he's responsible for driving business growth here and ensuring that Monster.ie remains the industry's leading provider of online recruitment services and solutions. James is also responsible for sales strategy and implementation. Founded in 1994 as a job board, Monster today has evolved into a global provider, massive in its field, providing a full array of job-seeking, career management, recruitment and talent management products and services. Monster Worldwide has an unparalleled international reach with a presence in over 50 countries around the world. The Irish office was established in 2000 and today has field-based salespeople in Dublin, Galway, Wicklow and Laois, as well as a telesales operation based in Scotland. So give a really warm welcome to James Maley.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ambassador Rooney, for this privilege to speak at this conference today. A lot has been said about symbols over the last couple of days, and one that struck me living in Dundalk was the Olympic flame being passed between County Down and County Louth yesterday. And it brought back, the last time I saw the Olympic flame in this stadium was back in 2003, and another great, for me, event was the 2003 Special Olympics. And at that time, it was the first time the Special Olympics had actually taken place outside of America. And in 2003, it was the largest sporting event that took place anywhere in the world. So it brought back very fond memories of, I suppose, inspirational people. One was mentioned already, was Muhammad Ali on this stage behind us, Nelson Mandela, and our own president, Mary McAleese. I was actually very proud. I joined Monster that year, and we actually built the website that helped facilitate 30,000 volunteers across the island of Ireland to support that cause. So more than that, what I remember walking into this stadium is the electricity and the passion and the joy on not just the competitors and the supporters, but everyone associated with the Special Olympics movement. And I look forward to feeling that feeling again very soon. So my name is James, and I'm passionate about technology. And Monster is an adolescent in the scheme of things. To hear Bill talk about Heinz, over 100 years old. Monster is just 18 years old in an industry that's just over 20 years old. So we're learning as we go as well. So today I'm going to outline how Monster helps companies use technologies to find great people, and how great people can find great jobs. In many industries in Ireland, the so-called war for talent, continues, and indeed it never really went away. In areas such as social media, mobile app development, cloud computing has been mentioned already, right across to biomedical and shared service centres, there is still a significant skill shortage in this country. And it's somewhat ironic that there's thousands of people are forced still this very month to emigrate looking for work overseas, while at the same time we are working with companies who are having themselves to go into other jurisdictions and find people to fill hundreds of jobs back here. In fact, at the moment in Monster, 1 in 6 companies are actually using us to identify and try and persuade people to come and live and work in Ireland. So how can companies in Ireland win this war for talent? There's 3 critical areas I'll cover just now that will help companies optimize their talent attraction strategies. The first has been mentioned a couple of times by the Minister and others, the concept of a more flexible and more mobile workforce right across the world. It's quite common, and we all see it, talent moving between borders. And it's quite interesting, Ireland is not the only country that faces this challenge. With Monster, we were recently working with the Nanjing Bureau in China, and they were looking to find Mandarin speakers who come across to Ireland and try and get them back home again to fill jobs over there. So it's an issue that affects many, many countries across the world. Also, it's expected that by 2020, 40% of the workforce will be made up of contractors and temporary workers. So companies need to become more imaginative, as well as themselves continue to be ever more flexible to both attract and retain this key talent. The second area is the effective use, and I stress the effective use of social media. I'm quite daunted to think there's people and experts in social media in the audience, so I'll try and do it justice. But in the last 5 years, the internet has been transformed into the social web, or some people call it Web 2.0. So social media now allows companies to really effectively target groups of people with common skills or common interests, but more importantly, allow those people to interact back instantaneously. Companies who do this well are able to target these talent pools and able to tell them about why their company is a great company to work for, and then allow those people themselves to network in their own groups and actually find out if that is really the case. Companies who do social media badly end up with a Facebook page full of complaints and issues not related to talent. Mentioning Facebook, Facebook is expected to reach 1 billion users by the end of this year. That's staggering, 1,000 million users. So again, somebody mentioned China and India. There's a third country, over 1 billion population. So at Monster, we've created an app on Facebook called Be Known. What that does is separates the personal and the professional networks and allows people to do that all in one place on Facebook itself. And another innovation allows job seekers to, before they actually apply for a job, look at who in their network is currently working at that company and actually ask them the question, what's it like to work there? And then allow them to make informed decisions about whether to actually make that application. That's quite a scary concept for a lot of companies, but what it does, it leads to a more motivated applicant and it leads to a more high quality application. The final area is the explosion of mobile technology. Mark touched upon it there, which requires for companies, not just in Ireland but everywhere, to better cater for how people are consuming data. And obviously the PDAs or mobiles or maps and iPads are good examples. This is particularly important in Ireland. Ireland is one of the highest penetration of smart mobile devices in the whole of the developed world at 40%. So companies who are successfully extending their employer brand to these devices, whether it's through mobile applications, whether it's through the mobile web, they're going to reach the talent faster and they're going to actually have a more significant, a more improved return on their investment in this area. So to sum up, companies who use technology more effectively will find talent ahead of the competition. And this is very important in terms of the competitiveness of both our country and the companies within it. However, I personally feel quite strongly, coming from a recruitment background, that technology cannot replace the personal touch that's so important in recruitment. So some companies are mechanizing the process of talent acquisition to such an extent that they're focusing on just on skills and not addressing the diversity and the opportunity to include other people into the mix. So it's been mentioned already, high-performance companies we see right now are embracing this diversity of talent and looking at interpersonal skills, looking at culture fit, looking at experience alongside the skill set, and that's proving to be successful for those businesses. A final point, and go back to the Special Olympics once again. President Mary McAleese described the Special Olympics back in 2003 as a time when Ireland was at its superb best. And how do we return to that situation? I'd like to finish on all athletes who took part and take part in the Special Olympics take the athlete's oath. And perhaps to finish off, this is a more humble but appropriate aspiration for Ireland to have. And that oath is, let me win. But if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a million for that, James. You were all such great speakers. We're almost at lunchtime, but I am going to take maybe one question from the floor. I'll take the two with the gentleman with the hands up. I'll take you on the left first and you on the right, because first up, first served.
Thank you very much. My name is Abhinav. I am the CEO and founder of two technology startups here in Ireland. And I'm from India, but I choose Dublin to start my business. And I'm very proud to say that I made a right choice. I can say that Dublin is one of the biggest and the best place to start a business. Richard, Minister Bruden, you yourself just mentioned that the best way to take this country out of this economic scenario is entrepreneurship. And the best way to flourish entrepreneurship is to flourish the investment culture. 3 years ago, in this country, there was 25 million euros available for seed funds, and there was one seed fund. Today, there is 126 million euro available, and there are 5 seed funds. This is a phenomenal progress, and the same way startups have gone. The bad news is that the investment has not gone that much. There is money just sitting idle there. On one hand, when we are looking for cash, there is money which belongs to Enterprise Ireland, which belongs to banks, and which belongs to, obviously, government, is not being invested. I just want to ask you, Minister Bruton, is there anything that government is doing to expedite and make sure that this money, which really belongs to the startups, does go there? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for that, Minister.
Well, yeah, I think there's a range of things that are doing. Obviously, Enterprise Ireland itself nourishes what they call high potential startups. This year we'll have 95 of them, and we've increased them year in, year out. Overall, there's about 800 of those companies, and clearly that's helping to nurture those. Enterprise Ireland also has this Competitive Start Fund, which is a very small amount of money, I suppose 50,000 in terms of setting up a big enterprise, but it's taking the brightest and the best opportunities. So there is if you like, Enterprise Ireland is creating a stream. I think the other side of it is obviously to make it easier for people, make it to think about taking up self-employment. And one of the schemes that has been improved by the Minister for Finance this year is the seed capital scheme. That's a scheme whereby someone who's setting up a business can get the last 6 years of their PAYE to put into a new company. Now, last year only 70 people availed of that scheme, even though we know 12,000 people, roughly speaking, set up new business. So there are funds out there available to people. Clearly, we want to create more opportunities for people to avail of the various supports to enterprise. And we're trying to work through chambers, through business organizations, to promote many of the schemes which have been devised to help, if you like, emerging entrepreneurs, but don't actually have the take-up level. Clearly, other ideas that we're developing are first-time exporter. So we've set up a division to look at companies who maybe have the limited ambition of just their own domestic market, and they could grow and avail of capital to expand if they look to export markets. So I suppose there's a range of initiatives out there to help make it easier to start up, to help make it easier to succeed when you do start up, bringing in mentors to support companies, and the Global Irish Network have committed to be willing to mentor some companies who, where their contacts and support can make a difference. So those are the sort of things we're doing.
Okay, thanks, Minister. And I'll take this question on the right that I said, yep, perfect. It's okay, it's probably working, is it?
Sorry, my name is Brian Hughes. I'm the president of the Connemara Chamber of Commerce. I just want to say to the Minister, I was disappointed that you never mentioned the word tourism. In Ireland, most rural Ireland depends on tourism, and we have no manufacturing. And there's a lot of people who live in parts of the world that I do who don't have manufacturing outside the door. The growth of social media has had a very quick impact on our business, and the old-fashioned ways of promoting your product has changed. And I'd just like to know, does the Minister have any plans to educate small tourism providers out there who really need the skill set to sell their product on the global market? And I'd also like to say to all of you here, if you're looking for somewhere nice to come this year, you have to come to Connemara to enjoy the hospitality and the beauty of our area. Thank you very much.
There you go. Minister?
Well, to be fair, I didn't mention manufacturing, food, digital gaming. I didn't mention any sector, so it wasn't an omission. I mean, the truth is that clearly we have huge opportunities. Some are in traditional sectors like food, like tourism, like manufacturing indeed, which are, I think, having a revival because of our greater competitiveness and other factors like, obviously the food sector is doing particularly well with prices and so on. So, but also then we need to gear up for the new opportunities. And I think you're right in saying, using social network to sell traditional products is an untapped opportunity. To be fair, Google, I shouldn't mention the company, but Google is working with the County Enterprise Board network to actually get people to go online and use marketing. And I know my colleague Pat Rabbit is extremely keen to see more businesses not only have a web presence, but to have the capacity to trade online, which, you know, some people just put up a brochure online, which really is underutilizing the power, as Mark was saying, the power of the network, or indeed James was saying, the power of social media is so powerful. And, you know, Local Heroes, which was an initiative in Drogheda, which I'm sure James knows of, they did very simple things to make a difference to their town, where they made it easy to have online, you know, coffee will be half price this afternoon in X such location. They did really innovative things using social network to drum up business. And I think there is an untapped opportunity. SMEs generally have a low presence in online, even though statistics will indicate that it increases their business by about 50%. So, you know, there is an untapped opportunity, and I think it's particularly relevant to tourism. So County Enterprise Board is promoting it, and, you know, to be fair, a lot of commercial businesses who are in the trade are also making it easier for business. And another plug, the NSAI, the National Standards Authority of Ireland, recently produced a manual. They called it SWIFT. I can't remember the end of the title, but it was essentially to guide small business in using the cloud as an opportunity for their business. So there's a lot of people doing different pieces in that space.
Thanks, Mr. Any brief final top tips, any of you'd like to give to that final question about social media? No? No? Yep.
As the Minister says, there's a number of organisations that will certainly help and support. And the thing about social media is there's so many kind of amateurs in the social media space, so it's actually something you don't have to have so much fear about. A lot of companies fear the social media thing, or feel they have to do it because everyone else seems to be doing it. So you can actually make small baby steps and start very small and then grow quite large from there.
Okay, listen, I just want to make a few closing remarks, but let's thank our 4 great speakers. Thank you so much. Next up is a fantastic lunch, and they talk about national treasures or national institutions. But the man who's going to speak to you at the lunch, Micheál Mura Hertig, Far Iontacht, is indeed a national institution. So I think we all give him a warm round of applause. I'm going to hand over to Ambassador Rooney. He's going to say a few closing remarks. Just before I do, I just want to thank him. Everybody here in this room, thank you all very much for coming. But we're all here, all the speakers, all of us voluntarily, because he is such an inspiring, idealistic and wonderful man. Thank you for being so great to Ireland. We salute you, Ambassador Rooney.
Thank you. As we wrap up this conference, I am recalling the perspective of our speakers, from the corporate leaders to leaders on the field. We hope that they all have given you food for thought and new material. I especially at this time want to thank Miriam for doing just a marvelous job, and she's been great. The only other thing is my real good friend, and it's very true, we're very friendly with Mark. Mark said that they're trying to keep everybody on television. If he takes a week off, and he really is a busy guy, and comes to Heinz Field in Pittsburgh, he'll see that we have the same kind of excitement that they have up there, as James said. So, Mark, you have an open invitation. And Miriam already, invited you to lunch, and I hope that you all come and hear our great speaker, Micheál Omar E.T. But thank you very much. It's wonderful, and you've been a wonderful audience.